Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our Tafseer class. It's been quite a long time. Just let me know firstly, is the sound quality okay? Because sometimes this microphone goes a bit wonky. So, testing 1, 2. 1, 2. It sounds better. Okay. So it's been quite a bit of a while since we had classes, but inshallah ta'ala we'll jump right back in. We didn't get a chance to stop at the most opportune place last time in March. But anyway, nonetheless, we are continuing on from page 125 of volume number 22, Surah Al-Infitar. And like I say, we are still halfway busy with the tafsir where we had stopped. So let us begin without any delays. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So we're continuing on. He says, قوله تعالى كلا بل تكذبون بالدين. He says يجوز أن تكون كلا بمعنى حقه وألا وألا فيبتدئ بها، ويجوز أن تكون بمعنى لا، على أن يكون المعنى ليس الأمر كما تقولون من أنكم في عبادتكم غير الله محقون. So the first point he's speaking here is that just once again, like we always do, is the linguistic aspect of things. So what is kalla? Now, when we look, we speak from our perspective of having dictionaries and everything of the sort. So you open your Hansware or whichever dictionary and you look at the word kalla and you have an idea. But for the Arabs, in order to understand literally word for word in the most, in the purest form, let me call it this way, because at the end of the day, when we read it and we interpret it, or at least we translate it, we are using an interpretation, not the actual word itself. Like I was just saying the other day, for example, what came up, you have people and they quote a hadith, من علق تميمة فقد أشرك. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke about hanging a tamima, then you find people in the later hadith, whoever wears an amulet and they got in brackets a ta'weez, etc., then he's committed shirk. And you say, but that's not the word of the hadith. But it's put in there from a translation perspective, and people read it in English, so they don't know what the hadith is actually speaking about, but rather it's an interpretation which is given to you, and you don't know any better. So that is why, even though it is Arabic, which Arabs knew, but Mufassirin delved into the deep down in the linguistics so that they could expand even their own understanding of the ayat on a more minute scale. So he says here that the word kalla, it can be in basically two ways. So he says that kalla can be like saying yes, definitely, and kalla can be like saying in other words, one is saying yes, you reject the resurrection, and the other one can say no, in fact you reject the resurrection. At the end of the day, it boils down to the same thing. Call it 6 or half a dozen. So as far as we are as lay people are concerned, it means one is the same thing. But for those who are actually breaking the deep linguistics down, then they make this distinction so that they can understand what all are the depth and ramifications of those ayat and the words used, at least. So anyway, he was saying that that's if you take it in the meaning of no, rather you reject the resurrection. He says ليس الأمر كما تقولون. Things are not like you say. من أنكم في عبادتكم غير الله محقون. In your claim that you have the right to worship others besides Allah, because, for example, they believe that ما نعبدهم إلا ليقربونا إلى الله زلفى. As Allah tells us in the Qur'an as well, the Mushrikeen said, we only worship these idols so that we can come closer to Allah in the first place. So, why are you making a big deal about it? But from we know you worshipping nothing but idols and you are fi nari jahannam. But any case, so you have no right to be worshipping anything else besides Allah. He says, يدل على ذلك قوله تعالى ما غرك بربك الكريم وكذلك يقول الفراء يصير المعنى ليس كما غررت به. So he says, another ayah which strengthens this meaning is the ayah which we did previously, ما غرك بربك الكريم, which means what has deceived you with regards to your Lord, the most noble. So he says, this similar thing has been mentioned by Imam al-Farra, one of the major imams of Arabic, and he says the meaning thus is ليس كما غررت به, that the reality is not like the deception which you are currently in. You are deceived into thinking there won't be a resurrection and what all and what not, but things are not that way. That's basically what it's come down to. Like I say, from a layperson perspective, you don't exactly see why do we need to get down to this nitty-gritty details. But Tafsir were originally, as you can tell, written in Arabic. So doesn't mean because somebody is a born Arab can speak Fusha that automatically understands everything. Not at all. That is why there is so much kitabs which have been written, so that everybody can draw more and more from the depth of the meaning of the Quran. In any case, I've spent too long on this point. Let's move on. He says, وقيل أي ليس الأمر كما تقولون من أنه لا بعث وقيل هو بمعنى الردع والزجر أي لا تغتر بحلم الله وكرمه فتترك التفكر في آياته. So he says two interpretations you can take here. Number one is things aren't as you are saying. In your claim that there is no resurrection. That's number one. Number two is that kalla is being used here as a word of reprimand, that they are being reprimanded, that do not be deceived by the fact that Allah has patience and tolerance with you. Yeah, you think, hey, how can I be doing wrong if, you still find people up until today, they say, if I was really doing wrong, do you think I would be having all of this here? I'd be a rich person and all of these things. It's because I'm in a good position. That's why I have it, which isn't the case. It is just that, like ulama say, Allah gives you rope. You hang yourself with it. Doesn't mean that you were in a good position. It's just that the rope was given to you and you decided to take it to hang yourself with. So don't be deceived by the tolerance that Allah has over you. And because of the fact that Allah doesn't, for example, destroy you and etc. and all things of this sort, so you feel deceived, I'm in a good position, and you don't bother thinking about the signs of Allah. Okay, see, Ibn al-Anbari means قال ابن الأنباري الوقف الجيد على الدين وعلى ركبك والوقف على كلا قبيح. So Imam Ibn al-Anbari, he says that when you are reading, and we know the ayat ends at those places, في أي سورة ما شاء ركبك and كلا بل تكذبون بالدين. So he says you should read the ayah as كلا بل تكذبون بالدين, in other words, and في أي سورة ما شاء ركبك, like that. So he says والوقف على كلا قبيح, but what is ugly, what is bad to do is to stop on kalla. So you say kalla bal tukadhibuna biddin. You're making a pause there rather than reading it all in one. So that's more like you would say from a qira'ah perspective. So the tafsir tends to touch on all these various points. Okay, let's move on. He says بل تكذبون يا أهل مكة بالدين أي بالحساب وبل لنفي شيء تقدم وتحقيق غيره وإنكارهم للبعث كان معلوما وإن لم يجري له ذكر في هذه السورة. So he continues the remainder of the ayah, بل تكذبون, but rather you reject. Who is it directed to? It's directed at the people of Makkah. Obviously, an ayah would have a specific audience and then the general masses at large. So we have a principle in tafsir which says al-ibratu li'umumi al-lafz la li khususi sabab. Different wordings accordingly like this in usul, but it means we take ibrah, we take lesson from the unrestricted nature of the words and not the specific reason for revelation, for example. So this ayah may have been revealed regarding the people of Makkah, but it applies to everybody in the entire world, whether the mushrikeen of Makkah were alive or eradicated, it really doesn't matter. The general nature of the ayah still remains, and thus we take it in every way possible, in other words. Anyway, so Biddin, Yawmiddin is another name for the day of Qiyamah. So Deen here, people, you may be thinking Deen, what is your Deen? Islam. But one of the names of Qiyamah itself is Yawmuddin. So Kalla bal tukadhibuna bid-din, it only you can take it, maybe that it means that you reject the deen, meaning Islam, but that's not the tafsir that the Mufassirin have given, because they understood that this was in relation to the day of Qiyamah. So rather, you reject the day of Qiyamah. Well, Bal, he says, and why was the word Bal used? It's because it's carrying on from to negate what has been mentioned previously. In other words, the ayah is not in isolation. It's part of a conversation carrying on. So Allah is saying all of these things, and Allah now switches to reprimand you and say, no, in reality, you reject the resurrection. That's basically all that it is. So he says, it was well known that they had rejected the resurrection. Even though no mention of it was made in the surah itself. So if you are looking over for example, the surah Infitar, and you're not finding where's the resurrection, how are you linking it? It's something which was well known. Everybody knew it. So Allah was, or at least the Mufassirin say, it's referring to that, even though it's not explicitly stated in the previous ayat of the surah, in other words. Okay, we don't have all that too much more before we end the surah, but obviously it will not definitely be tonight. But hopefully it's still in May, inshallah. Hopefully we can still finish the surah off. But let's move on a little bit further. It says, قوله تعالى, وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ لَحَافِظِينَ كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. So he moves on to the next three ayat. So, وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ لَحَافِظِينَ كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ. That وَإِنَّ عَلَيْكُمْ لَحَافِظِينَ. Indeed, verily, Allah has appointed over you hafidhin, your hafadha, those malaika that are your protectors, your keepers, different ways people who translate it. Kiraman katibin. They are kiraman katibina. They are noble recording angels. They, in other words, they write down all your good deeds. They write down all your evil deeds. People, we know them as kiraman katibin. People refer to them as, like, you've got Malakul Maut, you've got Hadrat Jibreel alayhi salam, you've got Munkar and Nakir, Mubashir and Bashir, and Malaika of that sort. So these ones are known as Kiram and Katibin, not Kiram and Katibin. You find some people and they think Kiram and Katibin, but that's not what it is. Kiraman Katibin. It means those noble recording angels. يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. They know whatever it is that you do, because Allah has given them that power and that duty to record every single thing. And not to delve too much in this, because there are many hadith on the topic. But for example, you do a good deed, you intend to do a good deed, you haven't done it, but Allah tells the malaika that they should write down a good deed for you. You intend to do an evil deed, but you don't do it. Allah tells the malaika, write down a good deed for you. You were planning on committing a sin, but you gave up on committing the sin. That, we would say, you wanted to commit the crime, let's punish you. But Allah is not that way. Allah sees it this way, that you wanted to commit the crime, but you decided not to sin against Allah. Then Allah rewards you just for giving up on that desire to commit a sin. So, okay, anyway, let me not digress too much on the topic, because it will be coming in the tafsir itself. But in any case, he says, قوله تعالى وَإِنَّا عَلَيْكُمْ لَحَافِظِينَ أي رُقَبَاء من الملائكة. He says, upon you are hafidhin, which he says are ruqaba is plural of the word raqib, meaning you have watchmen from the malaika that watch you. Kiraman ay ala Allah كقوله كرام بررة وهنا ثلاث مسائل. So he says that these malaika are kiram, they are noble على Allah, meaning that in the sight of Allah, Allah has made these malaika noble. So regardless of what anyone and everyone feels, if Allah has deemed somebody as being noble, then they definitely are noble. He says like how it is in the previous surah, in Surah Abasa, which was kiramim barara. But anyway, you can refer back to the previous classes for the tafsir of that particular ayah, which was ayah number 16 of Surah Abasa wa Tawalla. Anyway, let's move on further. He says, وَهُنَا ثَلَاثُ مَسَائِل. There's three topics that he wants to touch on under these three ayah. الأولى روي عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أكرموا الكرام الكاتبين الذين لا يفارقونكم إلا عند إحدى حالتين الخراءة أو الجماع فإذا اغتسل أحدكم فليستتر بجذم حائط أو بغيره أو ليستره أخوه. Okay, let me read it. وروي عن علي رضي الله عنه قال لا يزال الملك موليا عن العبد ما دام بادي العورة. وروي إن العبد إذا دخل الحمام بغير مئزر لعنه ملكاه. Okay. So he says the first thing he wants to point out is a hadith reported by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said that akrimul kiram al katibin, that treat kiram al katibin in a noble manner. They are those malaika la yufariqunakum. They do not leave you illa inda ihda halatain, except in two situations they leave you. In other words, because you have just known that they are watchmen, meaning they watching you at all times, except 2 points. Number one, al-khira'atu aw al-jima'. So it's al-khira'a wal-jima', in other words. So number one is if you are going to toilet. Number two is when you are together with your wife. Then the malaika are not there to watch you. Oh, well, we got to stand here, it's our job, so we're watching you. No, it doesn't work that way. Allah knows what happens. Here's the thing. Allah doesn't need kiraman katibin. Allah doesn't need recording malaika or anything of the sort. Allah makes the recording, malaika record things for our sake. Not because Allah isn't aware of what's going on or anything of that sort. It is so that when the day of Qiyamah takes place and your reckoning is taking place, you can't say, hey, where's the proof? These malaika will be there. Here it is. We have it written down. And you remember that day? Yeah, people today, they can plot a video and show you a CCTV. There they can tell you on this day at this time, this is what you had done, and so on and so forth. But anyway, so Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said they don't leave you except in those two states. So فَإِذَا اغْتَسَلَ أَحَدُكُمْ. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam now gives some guidelines that when one of you goes to have a bath, فَلْيَسْتَتِرْ بِجِذْمِ حَائِطٍ أَوْ بِغَيْرِهِ. Then let him cover himself, let him conceal himself from the public eyes. بِجِذْمِ حَائِطٍ أَوْ بِغَيْرِهِ. In other words, let there be some wall or something like this which is blocking you. Don't be standing in your birthday suit for all and sundry to see you. That's basically what he's talking about. أَوْ لِيَسْتُرْهُ أَخُوهُ. Or let your brother cover you. So in other words, not that your brother standing there looking at you in your birthday suit. No, it means that if you cannot find, you don't have a sheet, you don't have a screen, you have no way to cover yourself, in other words, while you are bathing, then have your brother stand there and block the way. Or let him stand, especially if he happens to be on the big side, he can block a lot. So he blocks the sight of people from being able to look at you. So the crux of the matter is that, or at least the reason why this hadith has been quoted is because the malaika are not leaving you. So therefore, in all states, you've got to be more towards modesty and concealment rather than just throwing caution to the wind and taking your clothes all off and doing whatever you want to like that. So that's number one. He says, وَرُوِيَ عَنْ عَلِيٍّ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. He says, it's reported from Hadrat Ali radiallahu anhu, but no sanad or anything of that sort. But anyway, it said that Hadrat Ali radiallahu anhu had made a statement saying that the Malaika continue to be with you, madama badi al-awrati, as long as the your as long as your aura is exposed, in other words. And the last narration over here is that when a person enters the bathroom, yeah, you don't obviously mean a toilet. It refers to a bathroom. In the old days, you had those Turkish baths and things of the sort. بِغَيْرِ مِئْزِرٍ or مِئْزَرٍ. When you enter into a public bathroom without a lower garment. And this is obviously referring to men, not to women. So there's no permissibility for women to go to public baths and stuff of the sort. But if you are a man and you happen to come to a public bath and you now walking around there, well, it's a place to bath, so no, not at all. You still are required to cover yourself even in that situation too, whether you are alone or whether you are with people. Obviously, if there's people around, it's much more degree of prohibition in that regard. But what it tells you is that even if you are alone, the malaika are still seeing you. So therefore, cover yourself. But anyway, it says, if you enter the bathroom without a lower garment on, la'anahu malakahu. Then if you enter the toilet in this regard, or bathroom, whatever the case may be, then the angels curse you. They curse you because it's like, you dirty creature. Think of it this way. Here you are, you in a dorm, you got a shared bathroom sort of thing over there. Now here, somebody goes and he showers and he comes out, and well, we all guys here, so it doesn't matter. It's not the way a Muslim works. So like you would say, get out of here, you dirty thing. The Malaika also say a similar thing, which is that they curse you in front of Allah. Okay, so that was the end of the first mas'ala you wanted to bring up. Let's just do the second one over here. It says الثانية. We now on page 126. واختلف الناس في الكفار هل عليهم حفظة أم لا؟ فقال بعضهم لا لأن أمرهم ظاهر وعملهم واحد. قال الله تعالى يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم. He says the next point you want to bring up is the issue that the ikhtilaf with regard to the kuffar. Do they also have hafaza, angels that protect them or not? Because yes, another point, people tend to think the recording angels, the protective angels are separate ones. So you can be sitting at home or wherever, you've got angels that another narration mentions about an angel in front of you, behind you, things like this. So they protect you from things that would have affected you had Allah not protected you from it. You go and sleep, you have bed bugs, you've got creatures and everything. Nothing crawls down your throat or up your nose or in your ears and stuff. And what keeps them away? It is Allah who has kept those hafaza, those protective malaika over there, so they protect you against all such things as well. So the question was, do the kuffar have such angels protecting them too or not? So some ulama were of the opinion, they said no, because لأن أمرهم ظاهر. Their affair is quite clear, crystal clear. وعملهم واحد. All the actions are the same, because whether they do good or they don't do good, at the end of the day, if they are not Muslim, then it doesn't exactly count for much. So why do they need hafadha? So some ulama are of the opinion that no, kuffar don't have recording angels. But others obviously differ with us, which we'll do next time, inshallah. But this is قال الله تعالى يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم. In Surah Ar-Rahman, Allah says that the evildoers, the wrongdoers, will be recognized by their wealth. Not their wealth, but their signs. يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم, that the wrongdoers will be, in other words, in today's time, you can see this person is a charlatan, this person is a crook and things like this here. That one is a gambler, this one is a gangster, he's got all his tattoos all over him. Yeah, he's a 26, he's a 27, he's a 28 from the numbers gang and things of the sort. He's got his signs. So likewise, on that day of Qiyamah, يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم. So you'll come there with your own chopper, so to speak. So the people will say, oh, okay, You are Nomer. You belong there in the jail. Yeah, in a different context, but you get the idea. So يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ, that you are the wrongdoers will be recognized by their signs. What those signs are, Allah knows the full list of it, but you have an idea of what exactly is being meant. And that's the end of that paragraph, and it's where we will stop for tonight, inshallah ta'ala, because yeah, it will probably take us another 2 weeks probably before we end up finishing this. Number 2. So we'll probably, like I said, probably take another 2 classes before we end of the surah, but so be it. We're ending on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala, because we're coming back for the first time in a long time, over 2 months. So it will take a while to get back into the swing of things. But that being said, we end on this point here for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.